Call to order this October 20th, 2020 regular meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. Dr. Young, is there any amendments to the agenda?
No change, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up, we're at public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to give public comment? All right, Mr. Dines, is there anybody online? Thank you. My colleagues, is there anybody who has sent in written correspondence? All right, with that being said, I will close public comment, and we'll start with reports from members of the board. Mr. Stonehill.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Kind of a short report. Wednesday, 8th this month, Mrs. Kupka and I met with David Beal, who is actually here today as well, who's the Northern Neck resident engineer with VDOT. We discussed different things that was going on in the county, issues, and how citizens can call in and make reports to VDOT as opposed to calling their supervisors. And he definitely recommended to set up an account on my VDOT and have the citizens then enter their complaints and everything, and they can do it all online, and that creates a paper trail for VDOT to follow up on. And they also get updates on what's going on with their complaint. So that's something that's he seriously recommended. And let's see, this Saturday the 17th, we, along with everybody else here, attended the birthday 300th anniversary for King George, the gala at the Back Porch Vineyard, which was a fantastic time at a new vineyard. Everybody had a great time, and just wanted to say thank you to everybody that was involved in setting that up. This last Monday, I actually had an informal meeting with Keith Johnson, also from our local King George office. And he had reported that the mowing is finally done here in King George County, and the local VDOT office can get back on some of the backlog stuff that they have accumulated over the summer due to the rain and the heavy grass growth that we had. We also talked about upcoming winter plowing and sanding. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday evening, I was able to participate in a Department of Social Services Board of Directors meeting. I want to thank Chairman Renee Parker and the committee that was responsible for going through all the applications. Yesterday, we held the final 2 interviews, and we moved the name forward to be named as the Director of Social Services for King George County. That name will be forthcoming. I can't divulge any of that just yet, but again, thank you to Chairman Renee Parker and everybody on the Social Services Board of Directors, and for everyone that worked or works at King George Social Services. Thank you for everything that they have gone through over the last couple months with the transition. Saturday, I attended an event at Mary's Cakery. The flash mob mobbed Mary's Cakery. This is a group of people that go out to small businesses and just mob them to show support, to raise funds, and make a donation to that establishment. It was very successful, so thank you to everyone who participated, everybody that went over to Mary's Cakery on Saturday and helped that business out. Also that afternoon, my son Tyler and I went out to the new driving range at Cameron Hills to test it out. Wonderful facility. I encourage everybody looking for something to do to get out, go see Cameron Hills driving range. It's a really nice facility. They did an excellent job with that. And on Saturday evening, my wife Ann and I attended the 300th Gala at Back Porch Vineyards, another local business here in King George County. Beautiful venue, and they did an amazing job. Thank you to the committee and everybody that worked on that. And while I'm on small businesses, I received some correspondence related to food trucks, and I'm sure some of my colleagues have too. And I just wanted to touch on that. There have been some complaints about food trucks being primarily in my district, and that's why I feel compelled to speak on this. I spoke with the individual, I'm gonna leave names out of it, that ran the food truck in Claydell, and he did not understand that we have an ordinance against food trucks in King George County. Now, you could always apply for a one-day permit. You can coordinate that with the Office of Community Development, but to just park out there in a neighborhood, you can't do that. And I understand there's some citizens that want food trucks in King George. I'm not a fan of regulation. I've made that public on many occasions, but there's one thing to consider. So we just used CARES Act money to set up a grant program through the EDA. We have small business restaurants here in King George that are struggling and on the cusp of failing and closing their doors. It would not be right to allow someone who doesn't pay real estate tax, that isn't a vested storefront in the King George County, come in and be able to sell their goods while I got restaurants here that are failing. And we're having to use CARES Act money through a grant program to help them survive. So maybe there'll be a time in the future where we could look at this. I have received correspondence from a previous communication that I put out to my constituents about ordinances. If there's anything you'd like to see changed, anything you find intrusive, let me know. Food trucks did come up, but there is a reasoning why I do not support repealing that ordinance or amending that ordinance, and it's simply because we're in a recession and we have established businesses that invested in this county that are struggling, and the last thing they need is that. That also brings up another point. King George County owns the high school, and I've been made aware that Chick-fil-A has been coming to do sales here. I think it's pretty hypocritical that we have an ordinance that you can't bring outside food trucks or something like that, that Chick-fil-A is able to come in to King George County, sell their goods, and then take those tax revenues back to Stafford or Fredericksburg or wherever they came from. So I'd like to have that looked into. I think we should be equitable across the board on that. My final thing, and I'm sorry I'm so long-winded tonight, Madam Chair, and I wasn't going to speak on this, but Mr. Morris brought it up at the end of the Service Authority meeting and said that he thought it might be an issue for the Board of Supervisors. So I'd like to address my opinions right now, if I may.
Go ahead.
So bottom line, the Service Authority is not in a position to take a revenue hit. After everything that the Service Authority has gone through, they can't afford that. The customers cannot afford another rate hike. The question of irrigation and HOAs. An HOA is a private homeowners association. And if residents have an issue with the policies an HOA has, they can vote in a new board. They can go through the process of amending their bylaws or whatever they have in place. But that's not a county issue. It's definitely not an issue where we should be willing to take a financial hit because an HOA has a certain policy. I also look at this as basically a rain tax. If we're telling new development that comes in, well, you have to put in this water system, that's additional costs. So I call that a rain tax. One of the problems that we have and that we discussed when we were doing our comprehensive plan is there is a lack of affordable housing in the county. Every time a development comes and we discuss proffers or we discuss something like this, those costs are not borne by the developer. It's passed on to the end user, which is the person that's buying that house. We are pricing out ourselves. So if we say there's an issue with affordable housing, that's something that we really need to look at. What burdens and restrictions and regulations are we putting on that bring additional cost that ultimately are being passed on to the homeowner? So just something for consideration, and only because it was brought up by your board. So with that, thank you for entertaining me. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Granger?
Yes, ma'am. On Monday, October 12th, I attended an FRA meeting. We got an update from Chamorro Economics about a cluster analysis they've been performing, just looking at demographics for populations, how they're predicting them to change over the future, looking at industries in the region, which ones we have a large amount of compared nationally, which we're low in, which maybe we should try to grow in, where we maybe want to improve our education to maybe run into those kinds of industries and things like that. They're still in the process of making that analysis, especially with COVID hitting. That's had an impact on some of the results. So it was taking a little bit longer to get those answers. But they did say, that's interesting, unemployment in the region spiked at 8% in July of 2020, and I believe it had then dropped back down to 6% is what they'd said. So that was encouraging to hear. Other than that, there was a Go Virginia update in regards to Germannic Community College. Dr. Gullickson said that they'd gotten a Go Virginia grant in order to develop a pipeline around tech talent in regards to engineering and computer-related fields. Apparently, it was a fairly large grant, so it was encouraging to hear from that perspective. So other than that, there wasn't a whole lot out of that FRA meeting to share at this moment. Other than that, on Saturday, October 16th, I also attended the 300th anniversary gala. I'd like to say thank you to all the staff who worked to set up that event and get it running. I'd like to say thank you to all the citizens and everyone who came out and enjoyed the evening. It was a nice time. And it was nice to be able to get out and actually celebrate for once with everything going on. So thank you to all those people who came out. Lastly, I would like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Frank Franzo to the Social Services Board.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry. Let me make an adjustment to that. The individual who he is filling in for can no longer serve, and it's through the end of this calendar year, I believe. So I'm going to amend my motion to appoint him for the remainder of the current term, and then another term after that. Is that acceptable, since it's only like 3 months, the current term?
Yes, you can, you just would make two motions.
Oh, okay. Make two different motions. Never mind, I'll make a second motion after this.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Granger?
I would like to make another motion to then appoint Mr. Frank Fonzo to the Social Services Board for the follow-on term starting January 1st, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you so much, everyone. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mine today will be a little long, and we have a special presentation at the end. First off, since Mr. Granger reminded me, I would like to appoint Mr. Joseph Gabbro to on the Smoot Library Board. His term ends on October 30th, and it would be for the next 4-year term.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries. I want to thank all of our staff and everyone that came out for the gala. It was a lovely event, and I think a lot of people enjoyed themselves, and I had great conversations with a lot of residents, some new residents, some old residents, and including one special resident who just became an American citizen. It was very exciting to talk to everyone out there, and I thank everyone who came out and participated. As everyone knows, I'm the chairwoman of the GWRC this year, and we've come out with a couple of new reports. One of them is not finalized yet because we were, due to time, not able to vote on it, but it was the transportation plan, and it highlighted King George and Caroline County, and as soon as we finalize it, I'll send it out to my colleagues. I had sent the other one out. But two main things I want to bring out. We know the bridge is coming, and there's been a lot of studies. UVA did a study, Weldon Cooper, and some other organizations. I think even VCU did a study showing them how the bridge is going to impact King George, and whether we like it or not, make it so more development come, and it's how we plan it. But three things I want to point out is James Madison Parkway. One of the proposals is widening it to 6 lanes with shoulders. That has a big impact. That's from VDOT in the study. And Kings Highway widening, which is Route 3, which would widen it to 4 lanes divided with paved shoulders. to the Westmoreland County line. So these are all things that will impact our community if they follow through. These are just suggestions in this study along with the ways to add transportation, bike paths, and sidewalks. But I'll send this out to you guys when it is finalized, because I think there's probably going to be a couple of corrections to it. With that being said, hold on, and I wanted to thank one of our own staff, Louis Pan. I always mispronounce your last name, and so if I butcher, I am so sorry. Pansy, right? Pancotti. I apologize. I always butcher like a pasta, but thank you. You were part of this study for the housing, and I, for one, appreciate it because a lot of people don't understand the term affordable housing. It's kind of gotten convoluted over the years, and people only put one vision of affordable housing into their mind when the topic is brought up. And GWRC commissioned a study and brought in stakeholders from the whole region to discuss affordable housing and what the definition is. And the definition they came up with was any home where a household pays no more than 30% of their gross income on rent and mortgage and basic utilities. And one of the things they showed here is in this region is, and Mr. Bush brought this up earlier, is proffers, different regulations, they make the price of entry into these homes expensive. And in this study, they detailed all the different ideas, theories, courses, way to fix it. It has a lot of information. I already shared this with my colleagues and community development, and they're going to be presenting it to the Planning Commission. And it's really some food for thought and understanding how development impacts a community and how fortunately, this study was able to input COVID into here and shows how with COVID, in a house, people now look at places they can do virtual school or teleworking and how that changes a lot of the dynamics in how you build a house and extra things you want to include. So you guys can go to the GWRC website to look at it, but it's very informative, and I thought I really appreciate it. I'm not a big fan all the time of studies, but I think this is one study that it can be quite helpful to our community, and I really appreciate it, and everybody who did work on it. But with that being said, now I come to the best part of the program. All right. Whereas the King George County Board of Supervisors wishes to recognize the exemplary public service and leadership of Mr. James Bradley Hudson upon his retirement, and whereas Mr. Hudson has been an active member of the Virginia Building and Code Officials Association, VBCOA, for many years. During his time as a VBCOA regional chair, he participated in rural county outreach and ensured each regional partner had the tools and knowledge they needed to bring back to their localities. And whereas Mr. Hudson promoted mutual aid between small jurisdictions, having worked in Region 7 for many years, Mr. Hudson often was called upon for advice on procedures and implementation. In this capacity, Mr. Hudson assisted in the development of regional code training to assist King George County, Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, and the city of Fredericksburg. And whereas Mr. James Bradley Hudson will end his 29 years of local government service, having dedicated 20 of those years to King George County, with 3 as the director of the King George County Community Development Department. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the King George County Board of Supervisors on this 20th day of October 2020 hereby thanks Mr. Hudson for his many contributions to help make King George County a better place to live and work, and does hereby congratulate Mr. Hudson as he celebrates his retirement. And I ask my colleagues when I finish, I will make them to make a motion so we can adopt this resolution adopted by the King George County Board of Supervisors 20th day of October 2020. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to accept the resolution as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. And before I bring Mr. Hudson up here to present him with this lovely plaque, I want to congratulate Ms. Heather Hall to be our new Director of Community Development. So congratulations to both. And could I have everybody come up here?
But I might catch the COVID.
Mr. Hudson, I open the mic for you for 1 second. You would like to say a few words, and after 29 years of service, the mic is all yours.
Oh, he's about to
Mr. Bush, be good.
I don't have anything prepared. I do want to thank this board for the opportunity. Dr. Young, I appreciate your confidence in me and hiring me to my current position. I work with a great group of talented professionals. Without them, my job would be so difficult. But as a leader should surround himself with good people and great people. And that's what I've tried to do over the years. I inherited good folks. We've hired good folks. And that's why they've been named the dream team. I couldn't do anything without them. Thank you all. I appreciate it. And it's been a privilege to serve the citizens of King George County, where I was born and raised, and have lived here 57 and a half years. And I ran away for 2 years, but came back real quick. So it's been an honor to serve the citizens here. And thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson, and enjoy your retirement. Dr. Young, I have one more thing. We have a survey we'd like to introduce to the citizens of the community. And Dr. Young, I'll turn it over to you for a quick second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the public is aware, and if you aren't aware, we've been doing a very hard job of trying to inform our citizens of what we're calling the Dominion Broadband Project. That is a partnership between King George County, Dominion Power, Northern Neck Electric Co-op, and our neighboring localities of Westmoreland, Northumberland, and Richmond County, I'm sorry. So the purpose of this project is a request for the regional localities to bring to the table amounts between $345,000 and $500,000 to exercise the right to run fiber across established right-of-way, or also known to the general public as power lines, across the Northern Neck. With the expansion of the fiber network, we are able to decrease cost of getting fiber ran to a community, and therefore getting broadband to the last mile and served residents in the community. In return for that small token of money that's being provided by the local communities, our utility partners in turn have brought to the table no less than $12 million to make this project happen. We're also working on getting a grant from RAHD, which is an organization of the state, and we are working on getting a license from the State Corporate Commission, who regulates large utilities, and getting them to lift that restriction for exercising established right-of-way as a means to expand fiber network. So one of the ways that the only way that this is going to happen, and the only way that Dominion Power is going to get this license, is to get feedback from our citizens that are currently been identified or self-identified as living in the underserved household. Underserved meaning that they're not gaining access to 25/3 broadband to their residents. And we need to get a good understanding of who these individuals are and how prevalent this problem is in the community. So I would like to ask that our citizens participate in a survey that's being captured by All Points Broadband, who is a partner agency of Dominion Power. This survey can be found at https:// fiber.gov allpointsbroadband.com. And when you click that link, you will actually see the survey actually for your address, which can actually be geolocated on a map. And then they actually for you to describe the difficulties that you've had with gaining access to the established broadband infrastructure in our community or the lack thereof. This survey will go especially a long way. The more feedback that we can get, the more that we can convince Dominion Power and in turn the State Corporate Commission on our need to actually expand this project throughout King George County and saturate our market and meet our broadband needs. Again, I provided you all the link on audio, but if that is a very long link, please feel free to visit the front page of the King George County website where there is a link where you can access the survey and your voice can be heard. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Young. I know I brought this up when I actually looked at the VATI grant because right now, under the current proposal, most of it is in Shiloh, but not everywhere. I know myself, and I think all of my colleagues are in the underserved, but under the current regulation, except for Mr. Granger, I think none of us could get this service. And for me, it is, yes, there is another provider that can provide service, but the problem is the cost of entry. The cost of entry would be running a line down my road in $27,000. So sometimes it is available, but the cost of entry that you have to pay for it, then pay for the service. And so we're trying to be able to make it so that more people can access it. Internet is very complicated, and access to broadband, and people don't understand it. You can't just flip a switch or wave a magic wand and make it happen, and there's a lot of things, but we are working hard as a full board to try to make it happen. And I thank Dr. Young and his staff, Mr. Britton, and everyone, including Northern Neck Dominion and All Points, and all the players that are trying to help bring internet to King George County and more available to more people. So thank you, Dr. Young, and your staff. So with that, I'll finish my long report and move to get a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up is a constitutional officers report from Sheriff Giles from our King George Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Madam Chair and the rest of the board. I bring before you tonight a resolution in opposition to any legislative effort to repeal or revise the judicial doctrine of qualified immunity for law enforcement officers. On September 10th, 2020, the Senate voted to pass by House Bill 5013 indefinitely in judiciary. It will likely come back up in January of 2021. The repeal or scale back of qualified immunity would be a disaster for law enforcement and the safety of the citizens of the Commonwealth. This is a knee-jerk reaction that does not address the concerns presented and harm the vast majority of, if not all, law enforcement officers. Without qualified immunity, officers will get sued for enforcing the very laws enacted by the General Assembly. Qualified immunity covers officers who are acting reasonably and within the law. There will also likely be a drop in hiring of new law enforcement officers if they repeal or revise this doctrine. I'm requesting that you adopt the following resolution to oppose any legislative repeal or revision of the judicial doctrine of qualified immunity and send it to our General Assembly members to show our opposition. And the resolution reads as follows. Whereas the General Assembly of Virginia is considering possible repeal or revision of the judicial doctrine of qualified immunity, and whereas qualified immunity protects law enforcement officers from frivolous, vengeful, and harassing lawsuits while allowing full trial of any case with merit. And whereas any legislative repeal or revision of qualified immunity would manifestly harm law enforcement by putting law enforcement officers at constant risk of unjustified lawsuits for almost every action they take. And whereas any legislative repeal or revision of qualified immunity would require the taxpayers of King George County to pay for the defense of any and every claim against law enforcement officials, no matter how frivolous or unjustified. And whereas repeal or revision would contribute to making the law enforcement officials hesitate or refrain from becoming involved in some high conflict situations because of fear of liability, even for actions taken in good faith, and such hesitation or restraint will jeopardize public safety. And whereas a repeal or revision would make it harder to recruit and retain the most highly qualified candidates for deputy positions because of the fear of repeated unjustified lawsuits. And whereas efforts to repeal the revision represents ill-advised prejudice against the men and women of law enforcement who put their lives on the line every day to protect public safety. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of King George County that King George County opposes any legislative repeal or revision of the judicial doctrine of qualified immunity and urges the county delegation to the General Assembly to oppose any such effort, and that the clerk shall provide an attest copy of the resolution to all members of the county's delegation to the General Assembly.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the resolution as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Sheriff Giles.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
You too. Next up is report of the county attorney, delinquent real estate tax collection. Mr.
Thank
Britt?
you, Madam Chair. So we have delinquent accounts. We recently hired tax to handle that for collections. But one of the types of collections is real estate, not necessarily with respect to taxation. But if there is a lien or something owed to the county, then we can file and puts a cloud on that title, and it has to get paid off at closing usually. Sometimes though, the property actually has to be sold if there is no closing, or you can't find the owner, or been abandoned or what have you. Anyway, those are handled and have been handled for a long time by Sands Anderson. And we discussed that there's no reason to move that, and they do a good job. I don't know what has been the past policy for the past decade, but I wanted to bring this to your attention to show you a reckoning of what they're doing and where they're at. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we're in good stead. And we're just going to keep it the status quo. Since Anderson, Margaret's probably the leading person on this in the state. So they handle many jurisdictions, including ours, and never had a single issue problem. It's completely opaque, and you can see the revenue generated. Don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Thank you. All right, I will move on.
That's it, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. We will move on to presentations and reports. RAHD update presentation by Dr. Denise Bonds, Interim Director. I'm guessing Mr. Dines.
Good evening.
Hello, go ahead.
All right. I think my slides are up. I can see. So good evening. Thank you for, first of all, accommodating me remotely and for allowing me to give you an update of what the district is doing with regards to COVID-19 and our response. Just as a little bit of background, I am the acting health director for the district right now. The district has been without a permanent health director now for a number of months. The search is ongoing. The job is posted, and I hope that there will be interviews shortly with a good recruitment. So if I could have the next slide, please. So tonight what I'll do is just update you on the current COVID-19 trends for the district and what we expect to see over the next few months. Just give you a reminder of what our response is and some of the other updates and activities that are happening in the health district. Next slide, please. So COVID-19 in King George County, since March of 2020, there have been 265 individuals that have been diagnosed with COVID-19. 25 of those individuals have been hospitalized, and there have been 4 deaths of county citizens. The 7-day average number of new cases is 1 per day, with a 14-day average percent positivity of 6.4%. There are currently, for the entire district, 25 individuals hospitalized with COVID-19. So those are not necessarily King George County residents. Next slide, please. In the district, you can over time. There has been a little bit of bump up over the last week or two, but in general, the numbers have been relatively low overall for the entire district. Next slide, please. When we look at who's actually getting COVID-19, so on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see the cases by age group. And you can see that the vast majority of cases are actually in our younger population, the 20 to 50-ish year age group. But that begins to shift to older age groups as we look at who gets hospitalized. So we know that this disease really impacts individuals who are older and who have comorbidities. And that's seen in this hospitalization graph in the middle of the slide, showing the skew to older age groups. And when we look at the number of deaths by age group, the far right-hand side graph, we can see that it's really skewed towards those older age groups. So younger individuals who get the disease seem to do well, but as you get older or you have comorbidities, you seem to have more problems that may result in hospitalization. And certainly that's where we see the most deaths by age in that older age group. Next slide, please. On this graph, we see who's actually being impacted by race and ethnicity. So the purple bar on the left-hand side of each set of bars is the population for the district, the percent of that particular group. And then as we go across, we see the number of cases, the percent of hospitalizations, and the percent of deaths. So you can see that although the Latino group represents a very small proportion of individuals in the health district, they actually constitute a very large proportion of cases and hospitalizations. If you look to the far left, you can see the Black or African American population is slightly overrepresented in our hospitalizations. And the white population is underrepresented with regard to percent of cases and percent of hospitalization. Next slide, please. So right now, we see that the number of new cases per day is somewhat lower than it's been in several months. So that's good news. We continue to see high number of cases among young adults. We see higher mortality amongst older adults. And we do see an overrepresentation and a high infection rate among racial and ethnic minority groups in this district, particularly among the Latinx population. Next slide, please. So what this means right now is we still have virus in the community. And if you think back on the slide that showed the change over time, we did see a bit of an upswing in the last week or two. So we do need everyone to continue with all of the precautions that we've been asking people to do all along. Keep your social distance, your physical distance. Recommended is 6 feet. Further, if you're out exercising, be sure you wear a cloth-based covering, particularly when you're indoors. That's going to protect other individuals and will provide some protection for you against the virus. Wash your hands frequently and for a reasonable period of time. Make sure that if you are still ill, you stay home and then clean on a regular basis. Next slide. So what do we expect in the coming months? Well, the weather is getting colder, which means people will be spending more time inside, and we anticipate that the spread of the virus will increase over that time period. The holiday season is coming up, We know that people like to spend time with their family, particularly this year when individuals haven't seen close family members in many months. And so that's going to be a mixing of groups that perhaps haven't spent time together, putting some of our high-risk individuals at higher risk of contracting COVID-19. Flu season is coming up. Many of the symptoms of the flu overlap that of COVID-19. We are really encouraging everyone to get a flu shot this year. It's really critically important. You certainly don't want to get both the flu and COVID at the same time. And we want to make it easier for our healthcare providers to figure out what's going on. And we're beginning to prepare for a vaccination campaign against COVID-19. We don't at this point in time know when the vaccine will become available. There are a number that are in the final stages, and so we're preparing for all contingencies at this point in time. Next slide. So we continue to do case investigation at the health department and contact tracing. We have a really dedicated staff and have hired a number of contract employees that are assisting with this activity. We investigate and provide mitigation responses for all of the outbreaks in the community. We continue to see a large number of outbreaks in our long-term care facilities, which are the homes for some of our most vulnerable citizens. And we work on a regular and daily basis with all of our long-term care facilities. The health district continues to staff a hotline that individuals can call if they have any questions about COVID, want to know where they can get tested, or what they should do if they tested positive. That number is on the slide there. It's 540-899-4797. The district is providing regular communications to media outlets and many of our community groups so that they're aware of what's going on. We respond to complaints that have been submitted by citizens in the community. Our environmental health staff go out on a regular basis to investigate. Most of these relate to the lack of social distancing or the lack of use of masks in an indoor location. Occasionally, we get complaints about events that are exceed the executive order limits. And then we provide community testing. We have a number of ad hoc events that can be found on our website. And then we are standing up with the Virginia National Guard some regular routine weekly testing events. I do really want to promote our phone app. The Virginia Department of Health has developed in conjunction with app developers and a phone app that you can download called COVID-Wise. If you leave your Bluetooth on and you have a smartphone, this will keep track of all of the other phones that are around you for the 15 minutes that we consider exposure time. And if one of those other phones, the owner of that phone tests positive, when we interview them, we'll give them a code to put in their app. And then that app will send a message out to all of the phones that it kept track of that met the criteria for close contact, advising that you may have been in close contact and that you should seek testing. I know people are concerned about privacy. It doesn't track where you're going, and it doesn't recognize any of your private information. It's just a code that the two phones exchange. And you can download that at any of your app stores for either a Google or an Apple platform. Next slide. We do regular free COVID-19 testing. We did a community testing event in King George on September 12th and tested 165 people. We also did a free flu shot clinic in King George on September 26th and gave out 65 flu vaccines to citizens of the community. As I said, we do have regular testing available at a variety of places. Every Wednesday, you can get free testing at Stafford Hospital, every Friday at Dixon Park in Fredericksburg, and then at Saturday, 10/24 at Lewis and Clark Elementary in Caroline County. We'll also be doing some testing events there. Next slide, please. We continue to provide many of our regular services for the community. We do family planning and STI clinics on Monday in King George, immunization clinics on Tuesday. We do continue to investigate other communicable diseases. We provide nursing home screenings. These are the screenings that are done by social services and the health department jointly to see if people qualify for home health care services if they have Medicaid. And of course, we provide our women, infants, and children food supplemental service. In fact, that's been booming since the start of the pandemic. On the environmental health side, we continue to do restaurant inspections and on-site septic systems. Our rabies program, of course, continues to investigate any potential exposures to rabies, and we provide vital records at all of our clinical locations. So that's my final slide. I would be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Dr. Bonds. One thing I asked, could you send your presentation to Dr. Young so he could distribute it to all of us since it wasn't in our packet?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'll open up to my colleagues if they have any questions. I'll go down the line. Mr. Stonehill.
No questions. I just wanted to say thanks very much for the presentation, and I certainly don't envy you up there in your new role, but thanks for everything.
Thank you, Mr. Bush.
I'm gonna pass.
Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Bonds, thank you for coming out and briefing us. Would you mind going back to slide 6? I had a question. So I'm looking at those purple bars, and I'm going to be honest to you, when I add those up, it looks like it adds up to more than 100%. And so I'm hazarding to guess there might be an error on the purple bars at least. And I was just wondering if you knew which one might be an error.
That is a great observation. And I am going to confess that I am not sure why it adds up to more than 100, but we will certainly look into that. It is an estimate, but it looks like it's more than just an estimate oversight. 370 seems to be over by about 2 or 3%. So let me look into it, and when we send the slides out, we'll adjust this for the appropriate to determine why.
Thank you.
Why we have. I think some of it may be because Latinx is considered an ethnicity as opposed to a race. In fact, I'm sure this is the case. And so if you added Black and white and Asian, and we didn't include other, that probably adds up to close to 100%. And Latinx can be either Black or white, depending on what race they declare. Sorry, there you go. Does that make sense? So ethnicity is the Latinx population, the Latino. Race is Black, white, Asian, and other, which we haven't included on there.
Others not included on there is what you said?
That's correct.
Okay. I still, looking at the purple bars, it looks like it's probably about 6 or 7% above 100%.
Right. It's because they're not. It's two different categories that have been put on the same slide. I'm sorry. So it's race, which is Black, white, and Asian, which if you add those up, Black is about 20%, white is about 75. And then Asian is probably 1 or 2%, and there's probably another 1 or 2% of other. But if you think about when you filled out your census form, you had to declare a race, and then you could also declare an ethnicity. And Latinx, which was previously called Hispanic, is an ethnicity. So we've made it unduly confusing by putting them all on the same slide. It's really two different categories. So there's 10% of individuals that declare Latinx as their ethnicity, but there's another 90% that we haven't included on here who say their ethnicity is non-Latinx or non-Hispanic. But a Latinx can be white or black.
Okay.
I'll send some, when we forward the slides out, we'll put some information at the bottom to clarify this for you.
All right. I have a quick question. You mentioned the testing day on September 12th. How many people were tested?
If you could advance to the slide, I'm sorry, I don't know that I know that off the top of my head. Typically, we test somewhere between 75 and 150, depending on the testing event and where we're at. We have the capacity for our standing ones to do up to 200 at a time. I can certainly find out from our testing team how many were tested on that event, and I'll be sure and put that in the slide for you.
I'd appreciate it. I had a lot of questions on that. And with that, were they all King George residents? Did you track, if there were people from Caroline or Stafford or Spotswood?
Yeah, I don't know that I can give you that information. We don't limit any of our testing events to individuals in the community, so they're open to anybody. So while we would hope that King George residents took advantage of that testing event, it's certainly likely that residents of Caroline or Stafford who were symptomatic and needed to get tested did drive over at that point in time. We don't ask individuals when they get tested for their address or their county of residence. We would if they tested positive at the end when we call them up to do a case investigation, but we wouldn't necessarily have that data on the negatives.
Okay, I had a couple people ask, because I noticed that our numbers did not go up for at least anywhere near after the testing event, as sometimes it happens in other areas. And just one more question, for that test, was it a rapid test? It wasn't the more advanced antibody test, correct? It was just a rapid test?
Yeah, well, it's not the antigen rapid test. We don't use those at this point in time. We still do a PCR, and so it's relatively rapid. Generally, we can get the results back in a day or two from our state lab, but it is not the point of care where you walk in and walk out with your results. There's a swab that we have to send off to the lab. In regards to your other about the numbers not rising after the testing event, while we certainly want to make testing available to anybody and we encourage people who are ill to get tested, we often see at testing events people who are worried but otherwise not having symptoms of COVID who come and get tested just to be sure that they're negative. More recently, we've also seen people getting tested before their travel, either going to visit family members and they want to assess what their status is, or they're doing some other sort of business trip. And all of that is a really great reason to get tested, and we certainly encourage everyone who wants and needs testing, but particularly if you're symptomatic, to take advantage of the free testing events.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Barnes. Thank you for your helpful information. We look forward to seeing those updated slides. Thank you for coming online this evening and sharing your information.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now we'll move on to our boards, commissions, agency reports. VDOT quarterly update presentation by Mr. David Beal.
Hey, good evening. It's good to be here with you all. Appreciate the opportunity to submit these monthly reports. Hopefully you've been getting them, and you noticed that this month I replaced the pavement schedule with a little ad for Virginia's for Lovers Not Litter. The pavement schedule for the year is complete, so all the roads that are being repaved or surface treated or having preventive maintenance on the riding surface, all that work in King George is done for the year. I would just like to clarify Mr. Stonehill's comments. Keith Johnson, our maintenance superintendent in King George, he was excited about being done mowing. That's because he's done mowing, but VDOT is not done mowing. Our contractors are doing the final mow now. They started picking up litter on Monday in King George. They started on the secondary routes, and then they'll mow all those routes, and then they'll get to the primary routes and mow them and pick up the litter there as well. And hopefully we'll leave that looking very nice over the winter. So we are still mowing in King George. We have a full mow cycle that we've just started. But Keith and his crew, they'll be monitoring the contractors, but they won't be on the tractors. So that was the reason for his excitement. And then the only other comment I had about Mr. Stonehill's comments is the other way that citizens can let us know their concerns is by calling our customer service center, and that number is 1-800-4ROAD. So it's FORROAD, 1-800-4ROAD. So you don't have to create an individual account. You can simply just dial from wherever you are and talk to our customer service rep, and they will take that complaint too. I did want to talk to you for a minute or two about litter. Virginia did kick off a campaign, Virginia's for Lovers Not Litter, and you can find all the information I'm going to give you tonight on the website, loversnotlitter.org. You can go on the website, and I'd encourage you to do so. You can take the No Love for Litter pledge. I have taken the pledge. You can also find student activities, and as well you can find information on 3 different programs that the state runs regarding litter. Hopefully you've heard of all of them. The first one is Keep Virginia Beautiful. We do different trainings, and we have individual litter pickup events. The second one is Beautify Virginia. And if you aren't able to get out and pick up litter, but you have the resources to sponsor a litter pickup, this program would allow you to hire a contractor to go pick up the litter on the route, on the designated route. So you can sponsor a litter pickup through Beautify Virginia. The final program is Adopt a Highway, and hopefully you've all heard of Adopt a Highway. That's a program run by VDOT. We ask that you adopt 2 miles at a time and pick up litter twice a year. And VDOT supplies the bags, and we pick up the bags off the side of the road once you fill them up. And we also supply an acknowledgement sign for your group's efforts along that route. In King George County, we have 12 groups that have participated in our Adopt a Highway program that encompasses about 27 miles of roadway. So I would encourage each of you, as you are able, when you meet with your constituents or different organizations, if you can plug Adopt a Highway and we find a way to get more miles of roadway signed up, I think that benefits us all. I will give you a couple of numbers. 52% of the litter comes from motorists, and these aren't going to add up to 100. And 23% comes from pedestrians. In the United States, $11.5 billion is spent on litter. $3.5 million of that is spent by VDOT. And I was in my area headquarters in Hague this week in Westmoreland, and eating lunch with those guys, and they had a picture. And we used to have a sign that we put on the back of the truck when we did litter pickups that said, litter costs the taxpayers of Virginia $800,000 a year. So it's more than 4 times that now. I think the sign was probably 20 years old. So $3.5 million a year by VDOT. In the Northern Neck, just this fall, out of my budget, I've allocated $70,000 that we're picking up, using to pick up litter. And the King George portion of that for this cycle is just about $14,000. All right, so that's it about litter. And the maintenance activity that we've been working on, you can see a lot of work in the Dahlgren area, trimming and pipe cleaning, as well as we were able to get down to Wilmot and machine that gravel road, and we continue to patch potholes countywide. I talked about, we just started our final mowing cycle. We're starting on the secondary routes, and as soon as we finish those, we'll move to the primary routes, and then we'll continue our routine maintenance countywide. Under construction projects, The Roseland Park job, we actually finished this week. When I submitted the report, we were still working on a few punch-out items, but we've actually finished the construction there. Rode by there just before the meeting tonight, and I thought it looked pretty good. The grass is growing and the lot looks good. The flashing beacons at 301 and Port Conway, still have that under construction. We've been waiting on some utility coordination. I got word this week that the utilities are supposed to be constructed over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully those lights will be working here soon. Secondary 6-year plan, Will Loop, we started surface treatment throughout the residency this week. And I expect Will Loop to be surface treated Thursday or Friday, depending on the weather. So that one will be wrapping up soon too. On the smart scale projects, the rest of the secondary 6-year plan projects are in the out years. The one smart scale project that was under construction this summer, the turn lanes at Owens Drive, I know citizens have been dealing with some backups there, especially on Friday afternoons. Apologize for that. Have been able to work with the traffic engineering section to revise our allowable work hours to get the contractors out of the road by noon on Friday. We do anticipate that work to be complete this week. They are planning final striping on Thursday, weather permitting. The rest of the projects there are in the out years, but listed there for your information. But that's the conclusion of my report. I don't know if you have any questions or comments for me.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Mr. Granger first.
Mr. Beal, thank you for coming out and presenting the information. I appreciate that, and the number for citizens to be able to use, appreciate that as well. I heard you say it wasn't going to add to 100%, and I was asking about that in the previous person, so I'm assuming you brought that up because of me, maybe. Just out of curiosity, it left about 26%. What other categories are there? Because I think motorists and pedestrians, and I'm kind of trying to even think, what other causes of litter would there be?
I pondered the same thought. I pulled those numbers off of the website. One thing in rural counties, and I don't know if this would still be considered motorists. When people take their trash to a convenience site.
Yes.
If you don't cover your load, it may blow off the trash can.
Okay.
So that's, you may not intend to be a litter bug. The other thing, I took a walk around my lot today at the office, and just where people throw the bags into the dumpster, it just blows out of the dumpster if you don't close the dumpster up.
Okay.
So I picked up some trash there. So that, I think, there maybe other.
That's fine. I was just curious because other than drivers and pedestrians, I couldn't think of much else. So, but that gives me some.
I'm a
insight, so I
math guy
appreciate
too.
it.
So when I wrote the numbers down, I was like, man, I wonder what the rest of it is.
I'm glad I'm not the only one asking that then. My only other question is, how often are the cuttings done for the county? Like, what's the schedule?
We try to mow secondary routes 3 times a year. So that's everything 600 and above, and everything 599 and below are the route numbers.
Okay.
Our primary routes, and we try to mow them twice a year. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. 3 times on primary, twice on secondary.
Okay. Do you do it like halfway through the summer and then right before the fall?
So
or
the
something
rule
like
of thumb is you try to have each one done by the major holidays.
Okay.
So Memorial Day, July 4th, and then Labor Day.
Okay.
So we've actually cut them 4 times this year, just because of all the rain and everything. So this last cycle is, I guess, just a bonus, or you could say we're late on our Labor Day.
But you're right. We have had a lot of rain, so I can appreciate it.
My thought is too, and to be completely honest with you, I'm feeling my way out a little bit. This is my first time being in charge of mowing. But because they're going to sit for, 5 months or whatever until we mow them again in the spring, I'm trying to wait as late in the year till we get that first frost, make sure everything's dormant so that it looks nice and it doesn't look like, it just looks nice for the entire winter. So I don't think it's going to grow at all after we cut it here in the next couple of weeks.
I understand. I appreciate the logic behind why you decide to wait a little bit.
But my counterpart in Saluda, she cut hers in mid-September for her final mow. So I drive through her area every night on my way home. So I'm trying to, next year I may adjust a little bit.
It's still growing after that. So
Right.
the logic makes sense to me. So I appreciate your providing your insights into why you did that. So I don't have any other questions, but thank you for coming out and thank you for answering my questions.
Sure.
Mr. Bush?
So normally I have complaints to bring to VDOT. Even about things that have been done in the past. I live off Owens. So I'm not happy about 206 in Owens, but that's not what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm actually going to compliment y'all. So I've been driving through the work that's been taking place on 301 in Owens, and it's very professionally done. I've been very impressed by the operation that's taken place over there. And then the other thing is, for years and years, as you come past Sheets and you go down maybe almost to Matthias Point, there's always been flooding issues because the shoulder floods. It's been backed up. But over this last year, you guys have been keeping those ditches, I would call them, cleared out. I mean, I've seen that cleared out, and we get a big rainstorm, that water is out of there. I don't see the standing water anymore. So thank you for that. So it's compliments for VDOT tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a mild winter last winter, and we were able to spend a lot of money doing ditches and pulling shoulders. So hopefully that's some of the benefit of that work.
Mr. Stonehill?
Mr. Beal, I just wanted to say thanks so much for coming out tonight, and thank you for our meeting the other day. That was very informative, and to get a face-to-face and talk to you about that. And I just wanted to tell you guys, like I said at our other meeting, how professional I thought VDOT has gotten over the years, for you guys and for Keith as well here in our local office. I mean, they've done a fantastic job here. Shorthanded, lots of grass, COVID, all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to say thanks and to tell Keith as well. I'll pass that along. Thank you.
I also want to echo thank you. I know you met me probably soon after you took over, and I showed you some issues on Eden Drive where it comes onto 301, and you had sent out the mowers to mow that area for safety, and I appreciate that. That was quick response, and also too with Potomac Drive, because I had a couple of people that I've known through the years had reached out to me about the culverts, and you guys are addressing some of the cuttings and cleaning those out from what I understand. So I really do appreciate it, and I have to make a shout out because my daughter's a Girl Scout, and she hates litter too, and she always says, why can't people pick up their trash? So she would say kudos to you also for being with that campaign. So I just want to thank you once again.
Okay, thank you all.
Oops, sorry, turn the microphone off. Next up is Nova Cigarette Tax Board presentation by Ms. Deborah Cannon, and I'm guessing she's online. Ms. Cannon?
I don't think that Ms. Cannon is here. Ms. Cannon, are you online, ma'am?
No online? Dr.
Okay.
Young, do you have?
Well, if Ms. Cannon isn't online, that's fine, ma'am. I would like to utilize this opportunity to talk to the board about some notes that both Matt and myself compared and make a recommendation to the board that we're hoping that you will approve for action. Specifically, Matt and myself have been sitting on a cigarette tax working group that is comprised of the Department of Taxation, wholesalers, VACO, different localities across the region. And basically, this group is purposed with trying to figure out how counties are going to administer the cigarette taxing authority that's supposed to take effect in July 2021. And I think that it's fair to say that since attending these groups, everybody's come to the conclusion that, number one, this is a logistical nightmare. And number two, there's a lot that we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Some of the talking points that are coming up is the fact that the Department of Taxation has been tasked with drafting a report of their findings that will be turned over to the General Assembly. And it's very concerning because some of the tones that both Matt and myself are hearing is some recurring themes to include perhaps maybe pushing that taxing authority date back from July 2021, which means the county, not just King George County, but across the Commonwealth stand to lose millions of dollars if, the General Assembly took that recommendation from the Department of Taxation. Then number two, we're learning that the Department of Taxation does not want the responsibility of administering the cigarette tax, and what they're looking at recommending is either that take place via local administration, and basically that'd be a piecemeal effect across the Commonwealth, which the wholesalers are fighting against. So with that big push from the wholesalers, it looked like they're going to land on establishing regional authorities, which similar to the Northern Virginia Cigarette Taxing Authority. One thing that was stated by the localities to the Department of Taxation and to the wholesalers is the fact that, hey, standing up a regional authority, imagine like standing up to GWRC, that doesn't take place in 7 months, or in the time frame that we have for July 2021 to implement this tax. Standing up an authority, especially with so many localities at the table, to take a year, if not years, to make sure that all the attorneys, no offense, Matt, can hash out all legal concerns, and all counties can ensure that the interests are represented on a regional authority. So again, that recommendation too would threaten our ability to effectively realize tax revenue from cigarette sales by July 2021. So with that being said, and I hope I'm not getting out of line, Matt, I'm definitely going to provide your opinion. Matt and myself have agreed that, hey, the lowest barrier to entry is to jump in on an established cigarette tax board. Well, I'm only aware of one, which is the Northern Virginia Cigarette Taxing Authority, and it's best that we try to become a member of that organization as quick as possible. Matt asked him directly, hey, do you all have the capacity and bandwidth to take on additional members and localities? And we're not exactly certain. We're getting a mixed posture of different responses. Sometimes the director says, yes, we do have the capacity. Then a board member on the authority says, no, we don't have the capacity. And finally they concluded with, hey, well, we don't know, we'll consider it, submit the application, and we'll take it to the board, and we'll see how the vote falls. So, Matt, if I missed anything, please feel free to provide your thoughts.
Well, so Ms. Cannon, I believe is her name, she had to cancel last time because of a family emergency. And then we're not sure. I think Neiman reached out. I brought it up on the call. We were hoping that she would be here today. I think what's happening is there's one board member of the Northern Virginia board that is on this task force. And he said, look, if we're not at capacity, we're darn near at capacity. So Neiman and I talked, and I was of the mind of, why wait? We're coming up on this. We need to be up and running and know what we're doing. We can't be, we're too small of a county with too many cigarettes sold as in comparison to be running around at the end trying to figure this out. We have time, but we're not going to have time to wait and wait and wait. So I thought, well, let's get the authority of the board. Neiman is a great presenter. He really understands this, going up to Northern Virginia ourselves. Just get on the docket and say, here's the thing. To me, King George is low-hanging fruit for them. We're the 5th smallest county, but we're going to outstrip Fairfax in cigarette sales. So to me, they got to drive on 2 roads if they even have to come down here to do any collections or forfeitures. Instead of, you can drive down here through the entire county and then back, even with 95 traffic, in the time you can get around on, to a few stores in Fairfax County and Arlington and all the other ones. Mr. Stonehill has great knowledge of this, probably more than all of us combined, and he's expressed his reservations, some of which I hold. The sheriff has expressed some reservations. Some of it has borne fruit. But the fact of the matter is if they do have a slot, or if they do have capacity for us, it's not a slam dunk. They have to let you in. It's not like they're asking for people, and Loudon is asking to come on as according to this board member. So, of course, when I put the guy on the spot and said, are you saying you're closed because we don't want to waste your time? He said, well, and obviously he's just one board member. He can't make that representation for the entire board. So my suggestion is to authorize us to go up, get on the board docket in front of the entire board, make the presentation, And if we can get in, if it's a marriage made in heaven, great. If it's not, then we withdraw the application. If we get on and we don't like it, and we'd be upfront with them, then we learn how to do it. Ms. Cannon herself said that part of their mission is teaching others. One of the issues that we have here regionally is, you know, in the past 20 years, we migrated from Northern Neck regional commissions to Rappahannock regional commissions, but Fredericksburg is already in the Northern Neck, and they acknowledge that they have to come down to Fredericksburg anyway. And I think if they see they're going to go 14 miles east and get this volume of cigarettes, because we're a border, that's right. I mean, in terms of ease and profit for them, it's a slam dunk, it would seem to me. So in any event, that would be my suggestion. I totally agree with Neiman. I think he's the right guy to do it. Happy to help in any way, shape, or form, including going up there or helping with the presentation or the numbers or what have you, or the law enforcement portion of it. We wouldn't be committing. We would just be going through the application process. They wouldn't be committing, and then we could report back, especially to Mr. Stonehill, who has been on our regional sort of local subcommittee of doing this. And the other option is to do it ourselves, which would be difficult but not impossible. And then the other option is to form a regional commission. I've done those. I think that'd be very difficult. And I think probably because Fredericksburg is already in Northern Neck, we'd be migrating, I mean, in Northern Virginia, we'd be migrating to the Northern Neck, which would probably be easier for us in any event, since we'd be the main cigarette shark in that pond, as opposed to, because there isn't one in Fredericksburg. There are two others, and I don't know whether they're limited to region or whether they can add anybody else like Roanoke, but that would mean that whoever did their enforcement would have to drive up here in order to do that. So I don't know what their bylaws say. So I think we should explore the other regional commissions. I think we should get on the docket with the board up there, give them a presentation, see what they say, and come back and report to you. But I don't think we have the authority without the board to just go up and apply to a commission.
And Matt's exactly right. What we're asking for the board is not a commitment, but rather an opportunity for us to familiarize ourselves to the Northern Virginia board. I think why we're not having the director come down here, because they don't know the financial impact that, or the value that we could bring to the table. So rather than just continue to wait for them to come to a board meeting and continue to try to get them to answer our phone calls, I would highly advise the board authorize us to go up there, present the facts, make ourselves familiar to the organization, and I think that that'll lead to a more productive conversation, definitely more progress than what we're dealing with now.
Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for everything that you've shared. I know when I was chairman last year, I signed 2 resolutions to have this taxing authority supported. And it finally passed a General Assembly that I don't really agree with. This is one of the things that they did pass. So some of my concerns are, if we drag our feet debating how we're going to go about doing this, you may have a transition in the General Assembly, and this may get rescinded. There may be an occasion for, if it does get rescinded and a locality has already joined a group and is exercising that local taxing authority, that they can keep it in place. And those that have not, well, it'll divert back to what the previous law was. So I don't want to drag our feet on this. We've been pushing about this. We recognize the revenues or the potential revenues that the county is losing every day with the amount of cigarettes flowing out of this county. So I like the idea of Northern Virginia. But my question is, if we were to join, say, that regional association, is there a commitment period? Is it indefinite? Is there a point to where we can say, okay, we've watched how this has occurred for, let's say, 2-4 years, and we believe that the county could do it effectively from lessons learned and watching how this is going, and we stand up our own department, because that's what it would take. To run something of this magnitude, we would probably have to stand up an individual department.
Madam Chair. We don't know. That was one of the things that we were just going to be open with them. We're talking about 2 years, I think, to learn it and just be very open with them to say we don't know what the other counties around us are going to do. It may make more sense. But Ms. Cannon previously on the telephone was very open to that type of educating and what have you. And because we would be, even though we would have a lot of gross sales, still we would be small compared to their complete revenue. I mean, they have Arlington and Fairfax. So I don't think that would be a problem, but they may use that in their calculus and say, well, Loudon wants to come in for 10 years, but there may be a minimum like 2 or 4 year commitment. We'd like to get up there and do the recon.
So, and then to follow back earlier, you said that they would have, Northern Virginia would have to come down the road to Fredericksburg because they're a member. So the question would be, what about Colonial Beach? Are they a member of anything? Because Colonial Beach has a taxing authority as it is right now, the town of Colonial Beach. Who are they? Are they a member of anybody, or is this something that's done internally in Colonial Beach?
I believe that they're locally administrated. They're not a member of the taxing authority. So,
because I know they currently excise a cigarette tax
Right.
in the town of Colonial Beach.
Right, and Mr. Stonehill, you know, of course, as Matt stated, is the leading expert on the cigarette tax authority, so maybe you have more insight, sir. Okay. Regarding Colonial Beach.
No, they're not a member of any board or anything. They just do it in-house themselves through their treasurer's office. And there's only a couple of, there's a couple of the Food Lion, I guess, and then also the 2 gas stations. That's it. So they do it all in-house themselves. Spoke to the chief up in Berryville, and they also do that as well in-house, where they have their own stamps, and the police department and the treasurer's office up there, they do everything themselves.
So to end my questioning then, again, thank you for everything. I would like to move forward with having Dr. Young and Mr. Britton engage with Northern Virginia, and not just for an informative session, but give them discretion to, if they can negotiate something, to bring it back to the board to be approved. And I like the 2-year time frame. It gives us a time period to decide, are we going to learn from them? Do we want to continue with them? Do we want to set up our own department in the county? Do we want to explore other options? It gives us that time, but at the same time, we're not kicking the can down the road, delaying, wind up losing revenue because we're not ready to go on July 1. So that's where I stand. So thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Did you want to, Mr. Granger?
Do you need a motion or just consensus?
I think consensus would be fine. We're not committing to doing it. We're not going to actually do the application. And Mr. Bush said we'd be bringing it back. I think if the chair had told us, or you get a consensus today, that would be fine. But just getting before the board and not getting direction from the board, I felt was beyond what we ought to be doing on our own, since we had talked with so many other people, including Mr. Stonehill, who had expressed valid reservations. Madam Chair, I did want to say one thing. The great benefit to this is we can evaluate it. They have a 6%, which is good. The state generally takes 10%. As you know, our statute on collections is now 20% that you can add for delinquent accounts. So 6% is pretty good. They're oversight by some very large counties, including Fairfax and Arlington. So presumably their audits are pretty tight. One of the things that we talked about was we're going to, obviously that suggestion was absurd on that call, that we just delay implementation of this for a while and the taxpayers lose millions of dollars. That's not going to happen. If the sheriff and me and Neiman need to get together with the Commissioner of Revenue and drive around every month and we make our own stamps, with a hammer and a stamp thing, we're gonna get it done. But the issue that we're looking at is in talking with, and Mr. Stonehill has given us some great information. The Commissioner of Revenue talked to Fredericksburg and why they switched and got their statute. And Colonial Beach, and I've reviewed a number of them, is the startup mistakes, you lose revenue as well. And so we don't want to be like, ah, heck with this, we're a small county, we can do this ourselves, we do hard stuff all the time, that's what our job is. Let's face the challenge. And now we're losing 12% instead of giving 6%, and nobody's teaching us the carpenter tricks, you know? And so that was our concern. And so we thought that it would be at least valuable to go on up there. They're interested in us and we're interested in them, be open and honest, and say, we're gonna reevaluate this thing every couple of years and see if we can either do it on our own. Hey, this is easy. How many staff members does it take? Is it worth having a staff member to do these audits? How do you get the report? Each jurisdiction is doing it differently. I believe Mr. Stonehill gave us a report from Berryville where they were allowing self-reporting based, you know, and you're sort of trusting the retailer. I can tell you from some ATF or BATF or whatever it was called back then, there are some reasons, I'm not saying about any particular business, but there are some reasons why external oversight is good. Sunshine disinfects. And so those were where we were at, but it won't be delayed. It'll happen if we have to do it ourselves. That's too much. We understand the gravity of it and there's too much. And I think that everybody, the problem when I see is everybody has a valid view. That's when you need to get more information, because there are three equal things here: join a commission, start a commission, or do it ourselves. And we can't see the light. And so we just need to be able to go out and get more information.
In that case, I would concur. Give yourself and Dr. Young the authority to go on up and investigate with them, get on their docket and talk with them.
One question we have is for the consensus, I think we all have a consensus to move this forward, but so you can actually fill out the application while you're up there, do you need a consensus or a motion for that?
Motion. If it requires us to fill out the application in order to get in front of the board, then we would need a motion. You could either do that now, give us and include both in the motion, or we could, if we find that to be the case, we were going to ask Ms. Cannon that tonight, but I guess she had a conflict. So you could do it both.
So
tonight.
if we made a motion giving you the authority to process the application, we would still have to accept membership, correct? Even if they accepted the application?
Oh, yeah, there's a.
So you could get everything done, it still has to come to the board and we would know the final terms.
Yes.
So I say, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to authorize County Attorney and Dr. Young to negotiate with NOVA,
Cigarette taxing board.
Cigarette Taxing Board, process an application and to bring back before the board to accept the membership if it's approved.
Mr. Stonehill, did you have another question before?
No, I just have a comment. You know, I've worked with these folks before, and, you know, this is the second time she was supposed to be here and didn't show. So, you know, as we talked about in our group meeting, you know, this is, you know, look at it maybe like a community college and do it for a couple of years, learn. You know, I did reach out and get the cost of, you know, a lot of the costs of doing it ourselves. I'm not a big fan of outsourcing things that we can do here, but, you know, if we did it for 2 years and, you know, got a little revenue coming in to learn, I don't think it's going to be all that difficult. You know, it's just going to be logistics and, you know, the enforcement of it and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm for it for a couple of years to see, and then, you know, to take that on ourselves.
All right, so we had a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. You have your directions. Thank you. All right, Dr. Young, 300th anniversary event funding request presentation. And Dr. Young, I just requested that if you can explain exactly in these requests how the events are paid for from the tourism funds.
Yes, Madam Chair. So I think that while we're waiting for Chris to pull up the slides, I will discuss a little bit more regarding how these events are funded. Just to put out any concerns about if these events are funded with King George taxpayer money, I want to make it abundantly clear that these events are funded by a transient occupancy tax. of which very few King George citizens, I would assume, pay. The reason why I state that is because the transient occupancy tax is generated from the sales and services of lodging in the community. Lodging meaning hotel usage. And as you all know, the bulk of our hotels in the community are in Dahlgren, and they service the traffic and the patronage of Dahlgren business. Sailors coming in to train, or individuals coming in for military conferences. So it's not traditional King George taxpayer money, which is being tapped like real estate tax or personal property tax. And this is by design from the General Assembly. The General Assembly had negotiated with the lodging industry to incorporate a transient occupancy tax, or at least give localities the authority to pursue a transient occupancy tax, with the understanding that because this was money that was being generated by commuters versus residents within the community, that the funding would have to be utilized on events and on assets that would promote more tourism or promote more commuters coming into the community. And with the King George County anniversary, we decided that we was going to pursue a dual purpose mission. Number one, meet that requirement that funding that's being utilized for an event be purposed with ensuring that the event tries to encourage people from outside of the county to come into the community, spend money, and enjoy the assets that King George County has to offer. And number two, as you all will note, that each of our events have been held at local events and landmarks throughout the community, is so we can utilize our events as an opportunity to promote our local businesses and promote our local landmarks. So our hope is that when we have individuals from outside of the community come to patronize one of our assets like Caledon Park or Bell Grove or Back Porch Winery, that they'll say, hey, I wouldn't even known that this was here if there wasn't a 300th anniversary event. And I think that we've been able to meet that end. I personally have attended all the King George County anniversary events. I have witnessed individuals from outside the county at all these events, and it's not uncommon to have a conversation with individuals saying, you know what, I didn't even know that King George County had this asset here. And I like to take an opportunity to smile and say, well, you know, we're a small community, but I'm kind of proud of it. And we got a lot of great things to show you all around here. So stick around, spend a little money, stick around. So it's, I think that the anniversary celebration has been a great opportunity to recognize our tricentennial, but it's also setting us up well to promote the future of King George County and the small business community. So with that being said, the final event for King George County, or what we're calling the grand finale, is being tagline, Light Up the Skies. Next slide. Light Up the Skies will take place, if you look at the left portion of the slide, top quadrant, at the King George County High School at 10100 Fox's Way in King George, Virginia. If you look at the bottom quadrant, this event will take place on November 14th, 2020. I'm sorry, that shouldn't be a Thursday. That should say Saturday. I apologize. The event will kick off at 2 p.m. and it will close around 7 to 7:30 p.m. The concept of the event is to be a fireworks display. This fireworks display will be the marquee for the event, but it will be supported by music, vendors, and local activities in the parking lot until the sun does go down, and it does lead into the fireworks event. We're even working on putting together a slideshow that commemorates 300 years of history for King George County, where we can show the first settlements within King George and where we stand today. That's going to be a heavy undertaking, but it is something that's currently being worked on and figured out by the 300th Anniversary Committee. If you look in the lower quadrant, this is the budget for the event. If you'll note, the total comes in at $38,330, but $30,000 for the event was already approved by the board last year, and that $30,000 was approved so we could execute a contract with a fireworks company that's been patiently waiting to shoot off the ammunition in recognition of the King George County 300th anniversary. So what we have is a need or a deficit of $8,330 to fund the event. One thing that I did note is that we asked exactly for what we needed for the gala, and we did not ask for a contingency. And that did cause some logistical problems for us. So I asked the board to also consider a contingency for this event. So I would like to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that you authorize $10,000 from the King George County Tourism Fund to be appropriated towards the 300th anniversary Light of Skies firework event in support of the 300th anniversary for King George County.
Madam Chair, I move to allocate $10,000 to the 300th anniversary Light Up the Skies event from Tourism Fund.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Granger.
Dr. Young, you asked for contingency for the budget. What was the motivation for that? I didn't catch that.
Yes, first let me note, I'm looking at the slide now, I see the typo up there. I still have King George Gala. It should say King George Light of the Skies. That's a derivative of utilizing copy and paste, so please forgive me. So yes, we learned that, and I always like to operate with a contingency. That way it gives you the flexibility to adapt to changes on the ground. For example, in the gala, we didn't have a contingency and the weather turned cold on us. So the way that we kept the tent warm last weekend was actually to get heaters. And we didn't have the funding for the heaters. So I actually had to utilize money out of the county administration supply line of our budget in order to meet the funding requirement for the heaters. And it's just little things like that that pops up that you're not thinking about, or like I said, the weather changes. When we first started planning the event for the gala, it was warm, so we weren't thinking about heaters. Then 3 days before the event, we're like, oh, it's a little bit cold. Our guests are going to be in evening gowns. They're not going to be very comfortable if we don't get heaters. And so I'm asking for a contingency in the event that there's something that we don't have the foresight to realize now that may come up within 2 weeks of the event or a week of the event, so we can make sure we can adjust and meet the requirements of the event.
Mr. Britton, do you have any concerns with the request for having a contingency line item on the request from the tourism budget? I know when we ask for people to submit proposals, that's by line item, and they're supposed to have, some quotes and things to kind of go along with justifying their explanation. And so I just want to make sure that we're playing on a level playing field and it's equitable across the board.
Right. So is this going to be toward the tourism fund? It's 5%, and a percentage goes to tourism too.
Yes, 3% goes towards the general fund, and 2% goes to the transient occupancy fund.
Right, so that's a state law. So would this be applying to, what I wasn't following was, does this apply to the 2%, which is earmarked?
That was my understanding, but
Yes, it's applied to the 2% that goes in the transient occupancy fund.
So I guess the answer would be yes, the way you asked it.
it is acceptable to do that.
No, I thought you said, would
I did ask,
concerns?
would you have reservations?
Yes,
You would have reservations.
yes, but we would just have to ensure that all of those funds, I mean, the problem with so maybe I'm misunderstanding how it's going to work.
I think that the concern is I'm utilizing the word contingency. When I say I'm utilizing this, maybe that's not the right word. I'm asking for the board to provide us 10,000, a budget of 48,300. I'm sorry, a budget of $38,330 plus $1,670 to make it even. So, for example, if the budget is $38,330 to be encumbered towards the King George County fireworks display, I'm asking for $50,000. It's still going to be encumbered to the same purpose. It's still for the event, but with the understanding that maybe asking for more of a budget than what we're anticipating to make sure that, any unforeseen costs can be addressed. So it's not, I'm not asking for a different line item or a different contingency. I'm asking for the same purpose, just a little bit more money.
No, there are no concerns with that because it's still, you still have to go through the APA. All that's going to be used for appropriate purposes, tourism. And so the overage is just going to be dumped back then. That's just like giving more money than, I think I can do it for 48, but give me 52. And it goes back in. So I misunderstood the way, I sort of heard it the way that you were saying it. But it's exactly, but no, under the circumstances as they were just explained, there's no concern with that. For the 2%, the other goes back into the general fund.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And that's my apology, sir. Contingency, I mean, it's still for the same purpose. I apologize.
I'm tracking. I just, I apologize for misrepresenting it, but thank you for the clarification. So, thank you.
Mr. Stonehill?
Two things. One, do we have a rain date for this?
I'm sorry.
A rain date?
Not at the moment. That's something that the committee is working out, because we can come up with the rain date, but we're still working with the third-party fireworks contractor. So we just got to make sure that we got to get a good understanding of their calendar as well. But we definitely will have a rain date in place prior to the event kicking off.
Okay, I just want to make sure it gets out advertised better than before.
Roger, sir.
Thank you.
I just had two quick questions because I know people are going to ask me. For the it's open to the general public, everyone, correct? In the vendors, there's going to be charge for vendors, right? Like if they're selling stuff, and also there's no charge of entry, but what they're, like that's why I wanted to clarify.
We haven't discussed charging for the vendors yet, and that's simply because we're pursuing heavily local vendors. We're getting out there where we actually have staff walking the grounds, talking to our local businesses, explaining to them that this event's coming. This is a great opportunity for you to generate some revenue for your business. Come on out. We've also been talking with our civic groups and delivering the same message. So we really haven't looked at this as a revenue-making opportunity for ourselves. We've
That's
really
not-
been trying to.
Yeah, I don't want it to be. I want it to be open to
Yeah.
everyone. That's
Roger.
why I want to clarify so the public knows this is
Project.
be a free event.
Free to the public and definitely free to our local businesses that want to get out there and try to have a captive audience to sell goods and services.
And then one other concern is the gathering limit. How are we going to address that?
Yes, ma'am. And that's something that we're working with the Virginia Department of Health. It's kind of strange. We've been operating under the understanding that it's a 250 person cap. But then as we've had more discussions with the RAHD, that number shifted to, last time we had a conversation with them, they said 500. And then we're like, wait a minute, you know, we've been operating under 250. What is it? So I think that what it's going to really require is we actually bring, it's kind of strange, it's like a role in reverse where now we're going to bring a site plan to the RAHD, show them the capacity that that the parking lot has, and we'll get them to be able to put a number to, if there is a number, to how many people can be at the event.
So this is an all open air event, correct?
All open air.
So it's a peaceful protest if we need to.
No, I just want to clarify.
At the worst, if there was concerns that the health district did have, there are measures that we can take. For example, you know, if individuals were limited to their cars or their trucks tailgating, you know, that probably would limit, you know, vendor opportunities as much. But now we have social distancing in place, and now, you know, we can see if there will still be concerns from the health district or not. But those are going to be ongoing and ensuing conversations with the health district, and we'll definitely make sure that we bring that information back to the board and we'll put those practices in place based off their advice.
The reason why I asked the question, because that was one of the concerns in our previous event, and that if there is, we get that information out sooner rather than later. That is where my concern is coming from.
Roger,
that.
Roger, ma'am.
So, and for the fireworks, are they going to shoot them over where are they going to shoot them over?
They're going to be shot from the high school, and I don't have the trajectory with me. I do have those notes. I can go back to my computer, pull those notes, and send that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as always,
Safety concerns and fire concerns. The fire chief's been consulted, of course. The fire company actually has done a site survey of the high school. They have considered their trajectory, and the engineering is in place to make sure that there's no potential threat to public property or private property from fireworks.
Right, because people are going to come to watch. I just want to make sure, because these are all probably questions we're all going to hear at some point in the next couple of weeks. So I just want to get them out there in the public comment. So we had a motion. Did we have it properly sent? Stone. All right. So any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and your committee. All right. Yep. Ms. Heather Hall, Department of Community Development. We are going to do FEMA updates to King George County Flood Insurance Rate Map Firm. That's a different acronym.
Madam Chair, gentlemen, I'm Mike Newchuk, the environmental specialist with the county. I'm joined here by Kyle Convoy, GIS manager, speaking regarding the FEMA flood insurance rate map update. The Department of Homeland Security's Federal Emergency Management Agency is proposing updates to the flood insurance rate map, the firm, for King George County, Virginia. The decision of King George County to appeal, or a copy of its decision not to appeal, should be filed with Region 3's office during the 90-day appeal period, which began on September 30th, 2020. As indicated by FEMA, the sole basis for appeals is the possession of knowledge or information indicating that the proposed flood hazard determinations are scientifically or technically incorrect. Next slide. 19 property owners in King George County have a structure in an area with either a proposed increase or decrease in the floodplain. FEMA has offered the opinion that with the rural character of the county and the relatively small changes in Zone A special flood hazard area extent, this map update will have minimal impact on existing development. Next slide. This is an informational slide that was provided by FEMA during their community outreach coordination meeting on February 18th. It basically says, there's been 4 paid flood claims in the county since 1978 for a total of $46,000. Less than 1% of the population is in the preliminary flood high hazard area. Of the 17,420 structures in the county, 150 of them, and these are estimated numbers, are in that area, which is less than 1%. Our average premium cost for flood insurance through NFIP is $607, which is 15% lower than the national average. Next slide, please. What this is a map of the buildings in the draft FEMA changes since last firm. You'll see the concentrations there in the west, there in the east, up near Dahlgren. And these represent the 19 properties that we have notified. Next slide, please. These are the draft FEMA floodplain changes that will be reflected on that firm, yellow being the decreased floodplain, purple being the increase. Next slide, please. The county sent 19 letters to property owners with a structure in an area with either a proposed increase or decrease in the floodplain. We've added a FEMA news flash to the county website with links to the web map and additional floodplain information. So we need to notify FEMA of the county's decision to appeal the proposed updates to the flood insurance rate map. And in summer of 2021, the zoning ordinance will require an update when King George County receives that final letter of determination from FEMA. Last slide, please. The recommended action is for the board to direct the county administrator to sign and submit the proposed response letter indicating King George County will not appeal the proposed updates to the flood insurance rate map for King George County. That's the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Granger.
Sir, thank you for the presentation. I'm just curious, how often are these updated?
Kyle, can you speak to that? Is it every 5 years or is it?
It's kind of, hello, it's a as needed basis. So
Okay.
The last time they were updated was in 2015.
Okay.
And then before that was 2009. So it seems to be about every 5 years or so. But this one was driven by some new data that they used to to update the model, which was LiDAR elevation data. That's why they kind of updated them this time.
That kind of answers my other question. I was just, for 5 years, it seemed like a pretty significant amount of changes, and I was just wondering what would drive that amount of change. And so it sounds like new data or new model. So that makes a little more sense to me. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Bush?
Not a question. I was going to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Supervisors direct the county administrator to sign and submit a proposed response letter indicating King George County will not appeal the proposed updates to the flood insurance rate map for King George County, Virginia.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thank you guys for your work, as always. All right, no discussion items. County Administrators Report. Dr. Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On October 13, 2020, the King George County Planning Commission completed its public hearing for the fiscal year 2021-2025 Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP. I would like to request that the board advise the staff of a date to host the first CIP work session.
How soon are you looking, Dr. Young? ASAP, or do you need a little bit of time to prepare, or?
No, sir. Within the next 2 weeks, sir?
Next 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Young, I listened in on that planning commission meeting, so I heard as the CIP is not as extensive because of COVID than it has in the past, correct?
That's very correct, Madam Chair, and I'm going to be prepared to explain to you all or some data-driven information on why we have arrived at that conclusion, especially from the loss of significant landfill revenue.
Right, because at first, after I heard that, I thought, do we even need a work session? Just bring it up in the general meeting, but I think one work session probably would cover everything.
Yes, ma'am. It's probably going to take place in one work session.
Right.
But held at a meeting, I think a work session is more appropriate. That way, give at least the department heads an opportunity to pitch their presentations.
If I could suggest, I know the school board was supposed to have a meeting Monday, which I believe got canceled, and now I think they're having a meeting next Monday. So I'd like to know what the school's plan is. So I don't want to have a work session before we know what the school's fixed plan is, because I know the school bus rotation is on the CIP still. So I would like to know what the plan is, if school buses are going to be utilized during this year. I know they're using some for some in-person, like special ed and things of that nature, but I'd like to see what the actual school bus fleet is doing, or what the schedule is when the schools open up, so that we can look at that actual school bus rotation, which is included in the CIP. So I'd like to have more of a true picture of the school's schedule.
So when did you say the school board meeting was being pushed?
I think it's Monday, this coming
26th?
Monday.
Do we want to shoot for next Tuesday, the 27th, to start off
Yeah,
Tuesday?
I'm fine with that.
Dr. Young?
I'm looking at speak, because I also received an email from Ms. Kupka, so I was just making sure her calendar, it worked for her.
That's a good
calendar as
idea.
well. The 27th?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, that'll work.
I'm good.
What time?
I can do 5 or 5:30. I'm working from home right now.
That's fine with me. I just want to make sure we're going to have Dr. Benson there, because I want to ask about, for CIPs, like we mentioned earlier, that we have a 5, 5, and 10-year plan of, what they're going to be adding to the CIP.
Yeah.
We mentioned that a couple of meetings ago, or might even been more at this time. All sort of goals.
And being this isn't advertised, do we want to select a venue? Like, are we looking at Company One? Are we looking at Rivercomb? I don't think there's a need to have the initial CIP discussion in the auditorium, but that's just my personal
Yeah,
opinion.
the only place I would think is if it affects the registrar, that's all. Yeah, but Company One is not.
Yeah, Company One.
I think that the option for us is either fire station number 1 or here at the high school. I'll default to the board's
Company One,
preference.
because I forgot about the election. So, Company One, Tuesday, 5:30?
What? We're laughing because of all people, you forgot about the election.
Again,
I
defer.
forgot that the river comb was being used for the election.
That's all right.
Is what I wanted to say. I didn't forget about the election because I vote in person on election day at my precinct, as it should be all over the country, but that's my opinion.
So we're thinking this might be the only CIP work session?
Yes, sir, it's highly likely.
I would suggest we hold it at the auditorium then, just in case people want to come out.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll have, I don't think we probably will, but just to give people the opportunity, if it's the only one we're going to have, if the schools are going to be there, I know that can be
Yeah,
a
there
driver
might
for
be
people to
some
come out and
schools.
talk, so I would like to give people the opportunity to come out in person if they want to.
Didn't we also invite the Citizens Advisory
Oh, yes.
Budget Group to that as well last time?
Yes, sir, we can do that. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so that would give enough space for everybody, because we did a good job that one double meeting we had, and all the chairs here, so.
So 5:30 was it? Was that?
Tuesday, 5:30 in the auditorium then.
Yeah.
Good.
So I'd recommend that the board authorize the county administrator to advertise a special meeting of the board of supervisors for October 27th, 2020 at 5:30 PM at the King George High School auditorium.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Dr. Young?
Yes, Madam Chair. As the board is aware, as Matt had graciously reminded us, it is the elections for November 3rd, and the county offices, in keeping with state holidays, are going to be closed in recognition of Election Day. As the board is fully aware, we do have a scheduled board meeting, and the staff is prepared to support that board meeting. But I didn't know if the board wanted to continue with that board meeting, or if the board wanted to scratch the November 3rd board meeting and would bring any agenda items to the November 17th board meeting.
How heavy is the agenda looking? Do
Dr.
we even
Young
have any idea?
checked it already today.
At the moment, there's no items that we have, no pressing items. I don't see any priorities coming down from the staff that really need to be addressed, that can't be addressed on November 17th.
Okay, then I would recommend, personally, I think we should just call off the November 3rd meeting then.
I agree.
My only question is the service authority earlier, so what would we have to do to take that off so they're both not on? Because we already made an announcement about that, if you remember.
Oh, the service, that's right. No,
The service authority announced that they're having a meeting. So where
Correct.
you run into your problems is when you hold a meeting that was not advertised. And Matt could correct me if I'm wrong. Where your problem is when you create a meeting and hold a meeting that was not advertised. So the problem isn't canceling a meeting, the problem is actually conducting the meeting that wasn't advertised. So I don't see where it would be difficult for the service authority board, get consensus of your board to cancel the meeting.
Right, the only issue, Madam Chair and Mr. Bush, is right, you can cancel a meeting because you don't have to advertise that. You have to advertise 3 days to have a meeting, and a public hearing's different. I just don't know how they could vote to do it. The only way they can cancel the meeting is to vote to do it. So you'd have to have a meeting to do that. So you could call a special meeting, you might do it on the CIP date you just did, and they could come in with that being the only issue on the agenda.
Or they could call in.
How do they vote to have the special meeting?
No, they can call a special meeting. The members can call, there's a procedure for calling of a special meeting.
Okay.
So they could call a special meeting. And of course, it can all be done virtually, thanks to Richmond.
My other concern, Dr. Young, and knowing what possibly could be on the agenda for November 17th, would that overload if the one case from the planning commission comes up on that day? Would that be an overload?
I think that we could exercise agenda management. We definitely have, especially in these times and circumstances, have gotten pretty good of managing that agenda and trying to establish priorities and measure out the board meeting. So I'm confident we'll be able to accommodate that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So the only other option is we could do it as a virtual meeting for election day so that we don't, because one of my concerns was the parking lot, and that could be used as a polling site, which would create an easy access for people to come to our meeting. So we could hold it online, correct, Mr. Britton, or we could just cancel the meeting.
Yes, you can hold it online. You can also cancel it. You can also convene online at this time and have a motion to amend the agenda to accept a motion to reconvene on a different date, and then just apologize and say, we're sorry, it's election day and we're going to move everything to the next date. You don't have to go to the CIP date or what have you, but that action does have to be, there either has to be a board meeting or there has to be a board meeting canceling, or actually you would be moving the meeting.
The problem is the service authority. Mr. Britton, can you help me with that?
Yeah, it's on the service authority side, so this board obviously can't do it.
Right.
Sounds like service authority got a problem.
No, that's where the
Oh,
special.
this board has no problem because you're talking about it now. Sorry, I thought we were talking about service authority the whole time.
Yes, I was talking about the service authority. And so is the consensus from my colleagues who are not on the service authority, I'll be calling you tomorrow to get some assistance with that.
We can work it out by special meeting or by holding a meeting electronically for a moment, accepting a motion and second to adjourn to the next meeting.
Okay, just for the service authority, not the board of supervisors. So what do my colleagues feel?
For the board, I would say let's call it off.
Okay,
I concur.
I'll let you guys determine how you want to handle the service authority.
it's all good. So do we need, Mr. Britton, do we need a motion for that or to?
To remove? Yes.
Yes, you would move the currently, because that's a published meeting, right?
Mhm.
Right. Yes, you would just move there would be a motion, second discussion and vote on whether to move the regularly scheduled board meeting, that's typically how it's worded, from to.
Gotcha.
We're not moving it from 2, we're just
We're
canceling it.
scratching it.
You're removing it from then that would be a motion to remove the regularly scheduled board meeting from the agenda.
I make a motion to remove the regularly scheduled board meeting on November 3rd at 6:30 PM in the King George High School from our
Calendar.
calendar.
Second.
Thank you, Mr.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
So now,
Thank you.
now Richard moves to adjourn till.
Well, Dr. Young, I just want to make sure he's done with his report.
That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn until Tuesday, October 27th at 5:30 PM in the King George High School auditorium.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye.